money is a terrible motivator. It's a very short-term motivator. It will always betray you. Like, not to be cynical, but it will always betray you, right? It is a shallow thing to chase. It will never fill that hole in your heart. And so if you recognize that it's money you're chasing, then, there's a whole lot of personal stuff you can do to kind of figure that out. Why is that? And I would strongly suggest that you spend that time.
The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you're ambitious. But are manual tasks like admin, lead generation, nurturing, and onboarding holding you back from truly scaling your business? Imagine saving dozens of hours every week, freeing you to deepen client relationships and execute high-impact strategy. Our clients aren't just imagining it. They're saving countless hours per week and doubling their revenue within months. We custom-build AI automation systems that eliminate the grind. From effortless lead generation and nurturing to seamless onboarding, we give you back the most valuable resource, your time, so you can focus on building those vital human connections and driving strategic growth. Stop letting repetitive tasks limit your potential. It's time to build a business that works for you, not the other way around. Ready to unlock your true scaling power? Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free AI audit call today to discover how you can save time and double your revenue. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Intelligence Forge YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode.
From chaos to clarity, the 7 essential elements of predictable business growth. Welcome to the Intelligence Forge, where we explore how business leaders are leveraging strategy and technology to drive real results. Today, I am thrilled to have Kendall Peterson with us, the president and CEO of Elementor Strategies. He is also an author, speaker, and someone who is being called a fixer in the business world, talking about businesses that struggle to find their path to predictable growth. Kendall, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. I'd love you to introduce yourself in your own world. Tell us about Elementor Strategy, your role, and what drives you in the work that you do day to day.
Okay. So Elementor Strategies is really a culmination of 20 years of consulting practice with about 20 years ahead of that of corporate experience. A variety of experiences, a variety of different companies, from small to very large. What I discovered along the way as I was investigating what made successful organizations successful or successful people, what made them successful, and why others were not, was that there is a common set of circumstances that define success. So we call those the essential elements. Those are the 7 essential elements that we built our practice around. And so really our practice, super simple, is to look at organizations and assess how well they're doing against those 7 different elements.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I know one of the things that I love to hear at the beginning of the podcast is some of the success stories that you have. I know you've been doing this for many years, just like you said. Definitely you will have seen a lot of things. But is there any recent wins or breakthroughs, that you can share with us, that for our audience to know, that probably something that you have with your client or maybe even within your own organization?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question when you ask it, right? Because success can be defined a lot of different ways, or wins can be defined a lot of different ways. And through my career, I've defined it in every way possible. So I used to have the largest, highest aspirations, and that defined success for me. In fact, early in my career, what I wanted to be was an astronaut. So I thought going to space or landing on the moon was like the pinnacle. And obviously I never made it. Otherwise you'd be talking to me about space travel. And so that was one of the first major ways that I had to redefine success. So along the way, I have had 9 of my own companies. I've had 9 startups. I've also worked with companies for success. And I can tell you, I've seen everything from absolute dumpster fires to very, very successful multi-billion-dollar companies. I don't think it's fair to only look at success as saying a company made it to $1 billion, because I've seen many dysfunctional $1 billion companies. And I've seen very successful smaller companies. So I try not to put a revenue figure around success. What success looks like to me from a business owner and looking at other business owners is really just a matter of, do you feel good about your business or what you're doing? Do you feel good about the project? Can you sleep at night based on the amount of revenue you're getting? Do your people get along? So that's how I tend to define success. And quite frankly, I see it every day in little ways. An organization may come to me and say, wow, like we're really struggling because we don't know how to make that first hire. And so I'm able to help them through that. They may come and they may say, we lost, $10 million last year, and we don't know how we're going to make that up. And we're able to work through it. Really, it's just a matter of working through the problems so that they stop being problems and they start being a feel-good moment within a business. So I get those every day.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing that. And I agree with you on the point that, we always like to feel good. And that's the bedrock of any success because, I've heard this many times that why do you, want something in life? At the end of the day, it's all about you feeling good. The more money you have houses, you have this, you have cars. At the end of the day, those are not the things that you're actually looking at. But what does those things make you do? It's make you feel good. Even if you have one car, that you maybe feel good about it because that's what you've seen the car. And you may not even have a car, but because of the fact that you even have money to pay for transportation, still make you feel good. At the end of the day, the bottom line is that you're feeling good all the time. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, but thanks so much for sharing that. But I'm curious about how you run your own consulting practice. With all the changes in technology, especially AI that is now becoming an household name. But my question is, what specific AI tools or technology are you currently using in your business to stay competitive and to deliver results to your client? Are there any tools that become absolutely essential to how you operate?
Yeah, I'll tell you, ChatGPT is a foundational tool in my practice, not necessarily because I can go in there and ask it questions. I think the success of any tool is that it's actually enabling a process. And so I started I'm going to date myself here, but I started in IT a little over 40 years ago when IT looked very different. And one of the things that I learned back in those days was you can apply technology and technology can do amazing things for you, but they can also hurt you if you don't apply them properly. And so one of the foundational things that I learned years ago was technology enables process. So if you don't start with a solid process, then all you're really doing is accelerating the chaos, right? And my business is to eliminate chaos. So before employing AI tools, actually, let me start here. One of the things that I see a lot of clients do is ask me, hey, how can I use AI? How can I use this? How can I use that? And what they're not doing is they're not looking at their business and saying, okay, where are we stuck? Where can we accelerate things to ease the burden on people? Where can we automate so that we don't have to hire additional people? And that, in my opinion, is the right way to apply AI. So when I say I use ChatGPT, it's not I use it just to use it. I actually have automated a number of processes in my business, the things that take us a long period of time to execute. The compilation of reports is probably one of the ones. We do a lot of strategic planning. So the compilation of a strategic plan, we don't write the plan in ChatGPT. We feed all of the information that we collect. We also feed our methodologies. So we're very specific about the methodologies we use. And so we've spent 2 years training ChatGPT to do what we do, but to do it faster. So that's one of the biggest tools that we use.
All right. Thank you so much. It's always music to my ear when I hear business owners like you explain some of the things they do with technology, especially with AI. It makes me also believe more that Yes, more business owners could do that. I mean, if you have automated some of these tasks, again, it's also because you're thinking ahead to know that this is a saving grace, not necessarily replacing human, but at least helping you do things faster and even better. Thank you so much for that. All right, magic one question. It's one question everyone gets to answer on the call. So it's your turn. So if you have a magic one today and you could instantly improve one thing about Elementor Strategies operation, what will it be and why?
An interesting question. So I'm actually working on something that I believe will revolutionize the work that I'm doing. So if I have a magic wand, I would just accelerate what I'm already working on. And it's just a matter of having people and resources and everything to build. But what I'm working on is an automated version of me. So one of the fundamental things about being a consultant is most people don't want a consultant. They don't wake up in the morning and say, gee, I wish I had a consultant in my practice or something like that. It is a means to an end. You hire a consultant to get something done, to accomplish something. And I'm all for it as long as you hire the right consultant. What you're really doing is you're approaching the world and saying, I've got a problem that needs a solution. I think a consultant can help me because I can't help myself. So what I've done is I've taken my 40 plus years of experience and broken them down into what I call solution pathways. And so I've written all of the question and answer, the way I would engage with a client, the tools that I would employ. And we have a little over 1,500 different tools and templates and guides and all of that kind of stuff that we use regularly. So what I've done is I've mapped the question and answer, the dialogue, the responses, the go this way or go that way. I've mapped all of that. I have 58 different solution pathways. And so I would wave a magic wand and bring kind of an automated fashion into that. What I really want to do is build that any business owner, again, targeting small to mid-sized businesses, that they could go to the app and say, man, I'm really struggling. We're not making enough revenue. Like, what should I do? And then have the persona, the AI persona, use our methodologies, use our tools, use our solution pathways to help guide them at their own pace, at their own comfort level, guide them through finding a solution, executing the solution, evaluating that solution yielded results, if not making adjustments. But to do what I do, but it can do it much faster and much cheaper. So that would be my magic wand moment.
Fantastic. I love it. I think I don't even know how many now, people that have come to this podcast to talk about cloning themselves, like about duplicating themselves because they feel like they have more to give, but again, they can't actually be in one place many places at the same time. And I think it's a trend that I think will really, really dominate the industry, any industry going forward. And I think the earlier people realize and start to work on that, I think the better, I think that would be a good one. But thank you so much for sharing that. And when you eventually implement this, please let us know. We will want to see it.
You'll be one of the first to know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, let's dive into what you're known for, this concept of 7 essential elements. You say success isn't random. It follows a formula. Now, can you walk us through what you mean by the 7 essential elements every success organization masters? What inspired you to develop this framework after many years in the business?
Well, I'll start at the very beginning of that. When I was 15 years old, I was homeless, and that came as a result of my parents getting divorced and a whole lot of factors. My mom tried as best she could to hold everything together. She was a secretary. She made $17,000 a year. It wasn't enough. So she was hustling side jobs and she was starting little side businesses and went to work at a startup. And so at 15 years old, I was sitting behind a dumpster that was behind a diner that I worked at. And I wanted to answer the question, how do I never let this happen again? And the solution was to look at what makes why are some people successful and some people not successful, right? That fundamental question. So I went about my life still wanting to be an astronaut and pursuing that and going to school and working. And I had I had the great fortune of working for an organization. I wound up in the nuclear industry. I studied nuclear engineering. I wound up working at a commercial nuclear power plant. And they were very big on quality improvement and trying to become the first American company to win the W. Edwards Deming Award for quality. And so I was involved in the teams, and I was getting trained in all of these really wonderful tools and methodologies for improving problems and solving problems and making things work better. And then that's what happened. I just kind of moved on, and I was put in a variety of different places to help improve the way departments operate. But simultaneous to that, I started doing case studies on businesses and just saying, what makes that business successful or appear successful? And really looking at, are they really successful, or is it just a good marketing campaign that they run? And so I did a little over 2,200 case studies independently, from the time I was 15 to my 40s. And what I decided to do was kind of take that same approach, the quality improvement approach, to analyze the data and just look at all of those case studies and everything that I have learned and say, there's got to be some common threads to what works and what doesn't work, what makes an organization healthy or what makes an organization unhealthy. And that's where I kind of stratified down into the 7. Actually, it was 6, and then it was 8, and then I finally settled on 7. And I think this is an important distinction. I did not invent 7 things that make businesses successful. It is really just a data analytics approach to say, these organizations that do things well, what is it that they're doing well? And so that's where I settled on the 7. And there are some other organizations that have come up with something similar, which is great validation. The similarity just proves to me that I wasn't pulling it out of my rear end, that it was actually real. And so those 7 things start with, the most important one is what I refer to as purpose. But as an organization or as an individual, it even applies there. The more aligned you are to your purpose, what is it that you want to be doing, that you desire to be doing, that you are made to be doing as a business or as a person, the closer you are aligned to that, the more what you do gets you there. And what happens is an organization that doesn't know what their North Star is, doesn't know what their purpose is, they do a lot of things. They're all very, very busy. They're just doing things that are working at odds with each other. And so that alignment you get from aligning to your purpose then drives your strategy. And once you have those all working together and you have everybody in your organization pointed in the same direction, rowing in the same direction, then there's an amplification of that work that it's palpable. And I can go into an organization and help just align that, and everybody will feel the difference within 30 to 60 days. So that's the first one. The second one is a look at the team. So having the right people doing the right roles in an organization. That's a hard one, right? Because what tends to happen in organizations, we hire people, and this is especially true in technical organizations. You hire people for technical skills and not for their core values. So this goes back to the strength of purpose. If you know your purpose, you will know the core values of the organization that align to the purpose. And so what you really want to do is you want to bring people into your team that align with your core values. And, oh, by the way, also have the technical skills for a position. If they're just technically qualified and they don't align with the core values, they'll eventually become a poison or a detractor from the organization, and they'll work against you. And so those 2 things are by far the most important things you can do in any organization. That's where I always start: align to purpose and get the right people in the right seats, get the right organizational structure. And with those 2 things, I can change any business in the world. What augments that is the other 5 of the 7, and I'll go through those a little more quickly. The first of those is what I refer to as systems. That is ways of work, not necessarily technical software systems, but ways of work. The more time you spend on making sure you have a systematic, repeatable way of working, just the more smoothly everything goes, the more people know what to expect and when to expect it. And it removes a lot of chaos within an organization. Sometimes you pair that, and this kind of goes back to the AI question that you asked. If you get the right systems in place, and then you implement AI tools or any technical tools, then what you're doing is you're automating a good system, which really yields massive results. So systems measurement or metrics. So making sure you understand and you're gathering the data that tells you reality versus your gut feel that rely on gut feel, and they're not always right. So you want to manage by fact with data. And then what I refer to as the bookends, which is why I went from 8 down to 7, is these two I just split apart, but they go together. So relationships and communication. So every successful organization builds really, really solid relationships with their employees, with their customers, with their stakeholders, with their investors, whomever. And part of that is communication, making sure you're communicating good information at the right time to the right people. And then the last, but certainly not the least, is what I refer to as innovation. That is a combination of solving your problems and not just living with the day-to-day troubles that you have, partnered with staying relevant in a rapidly changing world. So that you don't become irrelevant in the marketplace, because the world's moving very, very quickly, and you have to be where the world is going, not be where it used to be. So those are the 7. And to the greater degree that you do those, or the more you focus on those 7 things, just the more you feel a difference in your organization.
Thank you so much for summing it up. But my follow-up question quickly will be, where does finance stand in all this?
Finance is a part of all of it. So if you think about it, right, if you align to your purpose is going to tell you what you should be doing. It's also going to tell you what's real versus just a egotistical goal when it comes to your revenue goals, right? And I could walk all the way through all 7 of those. Finance is a function that applies all 7 of these. How you want to operate your core values is going to determine how you're going to manage your money, right? You can be ethical and smart, or you can be ruthless, and both of those could make money for you and can manage money for you, but you want to align to your core values so you're actually achieving what you want to achieve. And then on through all of the rest of them. You need to measure your money. You need good systems for managing money. So you just go through all of those. Finance in and of itself is not something somebody does well, because I can tell you there are companies or business owners that run a business that does $500,000 a year. And that's perfectly fine for what they want, and it fits in their lifestyle, it fits in their constitution, if you will. And there are companies that are making hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and everybody's miserable there. Finance in and of itself isn't a successful attribute.
All right. Thank you for explaining that. So are there any roadblocks that you've seen when you try to implement this principle or this framework in a business? Are there pushbacks? Are there, no, we don't want to do it now? No, this is not. Are there any obstacles that you've seen, and how have you been able to overcome them?
Yeah, there are always obstacles. The 2 primary, so the biggest obstacle is, so where ego shows itself in this is there are a large number of leaders that don't want to be perceived as not knowing the answers, that don't want to be perceived as not having the answers. And so an outside methodology or an outside way of doing things isn't welcome. I've even been asked by those same leaders to come in and help, but they reject the ideas because of the way that they do things. And that's, from startups up to Fortune 500, I've seen that. So ego is a big thing. It takes a certain amount of humility to say, I don't know all of the things to do to get this where we need to go. It does take a certain amount of humility. So without that, it's hard to overcome. And usually I just walk away from that organization as soon as I recognize that that's in place. If I'm lucky, I recognize it before we ever engage. But if not, then I'll turn away from that organization. So that one's the hardest to overcome. That's the hardest obstacle to get past, because it really relies on kind of getting to the root of whether it's real ego or it's just a facade based on a childhood wound. So that gets into the executive coaching part of what I do as well. The other obstacle is the feeling that it's too hard to change. So not willing to do the work that it takes. So everything that I teach, all of the methodologies and the frameworks and everything that I'll bring into an organization, they're all simple, but they're not easy. So they're simple to understand. And when you look at them, you would think, wow, that there has to be more to this. Success is simple. Running a business is simple. Making money is simple, but it's not easy to get a bunch of people to do the things that you need to do. So the second obstacle that I see is people will buy into the concepts, they'll buy into the strategy, they'll buy into the systems, and then they just won't do it because it requires a change in behavior, a change in habits, and just a change in the way of work that they decide consciously or subconsciously they're not willing to do.
Okay, thank you so much for breaking it down. So, one other thing that I also want to clarify is, does this framework work for Fortune 500 big companies only, or does it also work for medium or small companies?
Works for all businesses, regardless of size. It works for nonprofits and for-profits. It works for sports teams, churches, youth groups. It does not matter. Any organization it works for. It is really an organizational health methodology that we're applying. When you look at that, purpose, team, systems, all of that applies to anything that is organizational in nature. So I've applied it to all of us.
Where's your sweet spot?
It depends on how I define sweet spot. I define sweet spot. So I stopped chasing money as a business. I stopped chasing money 8 or 10 years ago. So if you'd asked me then where my sweet spot was, it was the bigger companies. I used to say that I worked for the Fortune 500 so I could afford to work for startups because they paid ridiculously well. But I don't chase money. So my sweet spot is really in the, let's call it $5 million to $150 million business. And the reason that's my sweet spot is because they have the money to invest in what it takes to be successful. And they're willing to do it. They're not tied up in bureaucracy, and it doesn't take 57 meetings to get a simple decision. So we can move at a good pace, and, they can afford to do what it takes. Not all of that is paying me. There are just, sometimes you need to hire somebody, sometimes you need to employ a system. So being able to invest in what it takes to be successful is the other criteria. And when we have that, then that's a great sweet spot because we can be successful.
5 million is a lot of money. So if that is your sweet spot, that's good. I mean, any company making 5 million definitely could be able to pay something. But there's some more question I want to ask you. If it's not relevant, let me know. But you mentioned in your profile that your businesses achieve consistent, predictable growth. What you've just explained also alluded to that. But I'm just curious, what's your biggest challenge right now? If there's none, fine, in terms of getting those 5 million companies in your pipeline. Do you find it difficult? Do they come to you easily? What's the game like?
Historically, all of my work has come from word of mouth and referrals from past clients. I do local networking and things like that. And occasionally somebody will see something I post on LinkedIn and reach out. But almost all of the work that I do comes from people who have seen evidence of it or have been told evidence of it. So it's very much evidence-based. So how do I get them? They just kind of know the reputation. The way I would say there's a challenge to that is just exposure. I'm only going to be exposed to a certain number of people. That's just the geographical fact to it, which is part of the reason why I'm going down the path of the solution pathways and automating some of this. I've worked with about 350 different businesses so far. I'm getting of the age. I'm not going to work forever. How many more can I really help? The thing that's really important is these methodologies work. If you're willing to do it, it's going to work. It's never not worked. I always say trust the process when I get started. And sometimes I doubt the process when I'm going through it with people. I'm like, this is never going to work with these guys. And then we turn a corner and it works. So the more people I can get it into the hands of, I think the more successful it will be. If I can talk to somebody and show them what we do, it's either they want those results and they're going to go with it, or their ego is going to stand in the way. And so the ones that don't go with me are generally ego, or I haven't done a good enough job articulating the success that others have seen.
Wow, well said. Okay, so let's bring it back a little bit because a lot of business owners will be watching this, listening to you, and say, well, it's actually easy for you to say, well, you building your business on reputation. You're building it based on what you've done, what you've achieved past, performance. What about you maybe explaining to us when you first get started? Definitely this methodology started and you get the first company to implement it with. You don't have any reputation at that stage, but somehow they must have trusted you to say, well, let's give it a chance. So maybe walk us through how it was at the beginning when you don't have some of these, case studies, some of these reputation. How did you navigate it through? I mean, how many numbers of people you've worked with? But when it was zero, when it was one, what was the journey like?
That's a good question. I have to remember all the way back then. I think the reality is, so there are a couple of things that I do that are very counterculture when it comes to consulting that I believe helped. And so I'll kind of talk through those. The first of those, I think, is I already had a business reputation, right? So I was in the workplace, and I think now that I think back, some of my earlier clients were people that knew me through that context, either people I worked with that went to other companies and brought me in to work with them. So still a reputational piece, which I think if I'm going to send a message about that is no matter what you do it well, do it to the best of your ability. You're always building a reputation, whether you think you are or not, right? So do that. The second thing is, so when you sign a contract with me to do work, the contract is, I'll do this work for X number of dollars usually, and 2 referrals, warm referrals, right? So my engagement comes with the fact that you're going to give me referrals, and that's that. Now, the way that I'm able to do that, and this is the part that I have arguments with consultants all the time, they really don't like that I do this. So in the early days, especially, it's a little bit different now just because of the way that I work. But in the early days, my engagement would be, here's what I'm going to do. Here's generally what you can expect. I can't pinpoint, exactly what we're going to accomplish, right? But I can tell you it'll be better than it is now if you listen to me, right? If you're not 100% satisfied, you don't pay me, period. And that's how I build my reputation. If you're not 100% satisfied when we get to the end, after I do the strategic planning workshop, if you're not 100% satisfied, don't pay me. When we get to this point, if you're not 100% satisfied, don't pay me. Though I did that, that's 20 years. I've had one person joke about not paying me. Oh, I'll just not, while they have a check in their hand to give me. But nobody's ever not paid me. The flip side of that is, so they're 100% satisfied and they pay me, which means they're also going to give me referrals. So the reason I did that very intentionally was that puts results on me, right? So I have to deliver. I have to be at the top of my game. I have to provide something with value. And one of the primary reasons I did that is because consultants have a terrible reputation. On one end, you have the big consulting firms where they're built to burrow into an organization and drive up billable hours, right? And we all know it. On the other end of the spectrum, you have anybody who's laid off or between jobs is a consultant, right? And so they're hustling for work, and all they're really doing is just whatever they know to do in that moment. And so what it forced me to do is I need a methodology that is repeatable and scalable. It has to be able to grow with me. It has to be able to be implemented by anybody. Also, part of my practice is I have the certification process where I'll certify people to do what I do. And so I worked early to build a repeatable process. And that helped me to deliver results. Because if you don't deliver results, then you're not going to get paid if you have if you have an offer that they don't have to pay you if you're not satisfied. So it put all of that on me, and that's where it should be. It should be on me, not the business owner. There are parts with the business owner or the leaders, right? Like they have to execute the plan. But if they're not happy with my part, then that's on me. The other part of that, which is tough to say in public, but I never turn anybody away because of money. So I have my fees. I have a fee schedule. This is what I charge. But if you can't afford it, then we'll work something out, right? Maybe it's a 30-year mortgage on my services, or maybe it's heavily discounted, right? I used to do free work, but what I found is with the companies where I do it for free, they don't really participate. They value it at free. So my language in my contract is something, but not nothing. So we'll work something out. You need to have some skin in the game, but I don't turn anybody away because of money.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's really very brilliant to hear from you, because I was going to ask that, are there people you don't work with? Probably not necessarily because of money, but money may be included. But because I've spoken to somebody who told me there are people we don't work with. It's not because they don't even have money to pay, but it's just because, the guy was telling me that the model they work with is that they must have equity in the company. I think they do something similar to you. It's just that probably maybe in a larger scale, because if they take on a company probably doing 5 million, they will tell them in 5 years, in 3 years, we will turn you into 40 million. And we want equity in that company for 5 years. And then if some people come to them because they see the result, then they tell them, no, but we don't want to give equity, but we can pay you. Then they say, no, we can't work with you because it doesn't align with. So now they push those people to somebody else. So I was going to ask you if you have some kind of principle whereby you think you don't want to work with some people, but you already clarified that. But one important question I wanted to ask you, because I'm looking at this, your framework, which you broke down very well earlier. Does this work only within the US, or this can also work internationally? And have you tried to exploit it with international companies?
Yeah, I've worked with a number of international companies. It works, I'll say, works universally, because I'm leaving the option that perhaps at some point we find a company in space and I'm able to go and do it there. But yeah, there are no boundaries, and that's one of the, I don't want to say the geniuses, because then it sounds like I'm trying to say I'm a genius. It's one of the ways I validated that this has value, right? Is it works across the board, right? It is so universally true that it works anywhere. Now, obviously, the language is different, or the terminology is different in different businesses. If I'm working with a tech company, I'm not speaking to them in the same way that I'm working with a finance company or a medical company or anything like that, right? And I can't think of any vertical I have not worked with, and it works across all of those. But that's how, one of the ways that I know that there's a goodness to the framework is that it does apply across the board. Now, what you have to have is an ability to assimilate what's going on in that organization. So I do have an onboarding process where we spend a little bit of time together. One of my natural gifts is I assimilate information quickly. So I can tell, number one, okay, what language do I need to use? How do I need to customize it? But the other thing I can tell is whether or not you're willing to follow the framework. And if I feel at that time you're not, then I will turn you away. I don't believe in the concept of only working for equity, because that's, in my mind, that just fuels the desire that you're only in it for the money. I would rather get paid whatever I get paid, whether you become $1 million business or you become $100 billion business. I'm there to help. So that's an important distinction in the way that I operate.
All right. Thank you so much for clarifying that. But here is something very interesting. Some of the consultants and business leaders who have come to this podcast, some of them, or we refer to them, which CMO, CFO, CTOs everywhere. But I notice you position yourself as a management consultant rather than explicitly saying fractional CEO or fractional strategist. I don't know if that is deliberate, if it is intentional. But do you think there is an opportunity cost in how you are positioning yourself in a market that's actively searching for those kind of fractional titles?
Well, so I will tell you this. The general umbrella of what I do is management consultant. I work fundamentally on managing how a company operates. That's the simplest way that you can put it. Now, the services I deliver, there are 7 distinct services that I deliver in my practice. One of them is what I call Operations Performance Protocol, or OPP. And that is where we do all of that alignment to purpose, strategy, and the execution, the translation of strategy into a tactical, executable plan. And then I work with them to make sure they know how to execute, right? That's one service. Another service I do is executive alignment protocol. So all of my things end in protocol. Executive alignment that's executive coaching or leadership coaching or group coaching, depending on what they need, right? If you've got a C level or a VP level that maybe they're a new leader or maybe they're not performing very well, then I can come in and I have a very structured methodology for working with them. One of the other ones that I have is fractional leadership. So I always say I can do anything in a company from empty the garbage cans to run the company, right? Because I've done all of those jobs in numerous companies. So what tends to happen is I'll go in, we'll align the strategy, we'll get them moving. They put a lot of trust in me because I know them and they know me. Sometimes I'll, on an interim basis, fill a position in the organization until they can find the right candidate. So I do fractional work. I just don't sell what I do as a fractional whatever. And the reason I don't do that intentionally is my goal isn't to burrow myself into the company. I don't want to be a fractional anything in your business. What I want is you to run a tremendously successful business, and then I go off and help other ones. But I can do it. I'm very good at it. And so I can go in and I can help for a short period of time. I have 4 fractional engagements going right now with different organizations. I'm a chief strategy officer in one. I'm a chief operating officer in another. I'm a fundraising person in another one in a nonprofit. So I can do all of these different roles. But generally it's like 1 day a week at most. And I'm just there to kind of get things organized and help you find the right person to take that place. And then I do a bunch of other things. All of those are under the umbrella of what I call the Elemental Success Framework, and that's those 7 things.
Fantastic. Let's talk about scaling. Any plan to scale your company in the next probably 12 months or maybe beyond that? Because again, what you do sometimes require your physical presence. And again, we talk about you cloning yourself earlier at the beginning, which again, it's not something that, well, it's achievable, but probably you've not gotten it now, right? But do you have any plan to scale to say, okay, if I'm helping 3 companies in a month, I don't know what the life cycle that you take each company into for you to say, okay, from start to finish, then you jump to the next one. But talking about scaling, is there any plan for that? And if you want to share something with us on that.
Yeah, I'm 1 year into a 5-year plan of scaling. So I resisted scaling for a long time. I didn't want to scale. I didn't want the headache that goes with that. There's a cost both in what it does to you personally and, just the financial aspects of what it takes to scale. I've also, simultaneously, I run other businesses as well. Elemental Strategies is really one of 4 businesses that I run. They're all kind of under the same elemental umbrella, if you will.
Okay, yeah.
So there's this practice where I help businesses grow. I have Elemental Protection, which is a similarly structured consulting practice where we focus on emergency management and business continuity of operations. So keeping businesses thriving no matter what happens to them. So those are the 2 consulting. And then I have 2 software companies as well. One is called Elementum and one is called Presidium. And they are the kind of technological portal engine, that piece of both of those consulting practices. So really it's a conglomeration of 4 companies. I started a year ago saying, okay, I need to hit more than a couple of 100 businesses in my lifetime because what I have is very valuable and I don't want it to die. My kids aren't going to take over my consulting practice. And so how do I just get this out there in the world so people can use it? And so that's where I started a certification process, bringing people in, certifying them to do what I do in the way that I do it and use the frameworks. So there's about 12 of us now. In the Elemental Strategy side, kind of working on something different on the protection side. And then the goal will be to grow through that and then through the technology implementation of what we do through Elementor. But yeah, in 5 years, this will look significantly different. And the way it will look is that more people will have heard of it, will be familiar with the framework, and will be executing on the framework. Yeah, I won't give you revenue numbers, but yeah, it should be significantly bigger. And this is what I do for a living, so I'm very confident in the approach and all of that. Hopefully, in the next 5 years, we'll see some greater reach.
Out of the script, this just came to me. You work with established company that are already running, but probably they want to do better. What about startup?
I work with tons of. I actually have a whole free service, not surprisingly, called Rocket Lab that helps with the launch phase. So usually people come to me either right after they've like formalized it and they're not sure what to do next, or when they have an idea. And I work with a lot of people that are leaving the corporate world by choice or by force and have an idea and they want to take it to, how do I do something with this? So I have tons of resources and guidance and all of that. So we run them through Rocket Lab so that we can get them to launch properly and then get the right trajectory to move on. So I do that. The startups, generally speaking, they don't pay. So that's why I used to say I work for Fortune 500 so I can afford to work for startups. I love the startup world. Like I said, I've had 9 of my own startups. So I'm very passionate about that. So I guess the other important thing in the way that I work is almost half of the work that I do is free, either because we do it with startups and most startups can't afford, even in the something but not nothing world, you don't have much. And why should you pay me a bunch when you need to be paying for marketing or you need to be paying for just a legitimate email address or something like that? I do a lot. I teach a lot. I provide workshops. I answer phone calls. You can schedule every email that goes out from me has a link to my calendar. You schedule time with me and I will talk to you and I will help you and I will guide you for free to the point where it doesn't make sense anymore. Right? I'm not going to run your company for free, but I do a ton of free help.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, the question just came to me and I think I was just like, let me just ask, because let it not just be, because that's also something that I believe could be untapped opportunity. Let me put it that way, but that's just the reason why I asked. But thank you for clarifying that. Okay, we wrap up. If there are people, business owners, that are listening, that are watching consultant business, CEOs, founders that probably maybe, in similar situations that you described, wants to grow, they don't know what to do next. What advice will you be giving them in order for them to be able to grow and predictably and systematically?
So, the first advice is just reach out to me. I have all kinds of things that I could give you to read through and work through to help. And I'm happy to chat with you. But if I were to break it down, right, let's say you don't want to call the consultant and you're afraid I'm going to sell you something, that's fine too. First and most important thing you can do is turn away from whatever you're doing. Have just a moment of peace in your mind and say, why in the world am I doing this? Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? You'd be surprised if you answer that question honestly. A couple of things will come out of that. One is because you want some greater good for whoever you're doing. And that's wonderful, right? Those are definitely things you can rally around, and you can get other people rallied around a greater cause. So that's awesome. It may reveal that what you're doing is chasing money. I see that a lot. Money is a terrible motivator. It's a very short-term motivator. It will always betray you. Like, not to be cynical, but it will always betray you, right? It is a shallow thing to chase. It will never fill that hole in your heart. And so if you recognize that it's money you're chasing, then there's a whole lot of personal stuff you can do to kind of figure that out. Why is that? And I would strongly suggest that you spend that time. And again, I have personal resources I could give you to figure out what you're chasing. But the answer to that question is, why am I doing what I'm doing, is what you need to build a successful business moving forward, to achieve whatever goals you want to achieve. Even if you do just want to chase money, that's fine. But understanding that that's what you're doing and that it's not an altruistic goal is going to help you align things properly. So first and foremost, start with why, as Simon Sinek would say. If you don't know who he is, let's look him up on YouTube. Why? That is going to fuel every bit of your future success. And second to that is surround yourself, even if you're a solopreneur, surround yourself with the people who are going to help you be successful. They are your team or your tribe or whatever language you want to use. But they're the ones that hold you up when you can't hold yourself up. They're the ones that open doors for you. They're the ones that encourage you. And they are the ones that are going to help make you successful. There is nobody that has ever been successful in business by themselves. And those are the two most important things.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much. That is gold. Yeah. And I believe our listeners, our audience, definitely, we benefit for everything that you've shared, especially the advice that you gave just now. But where can our listeners connect with you to learn more about Elementor Strategies? And if someone wants to explore your 7-element framework or schedule some conversation with you, where's the best way to reach you?
Best way. So there's multiple answers to the way that you ask that question. I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm just Kendall Peterson on LinkedIn. There's not that many Kendall Petersons in the world, but we're all on LinkedIn. So just look for this face. You can go to my website, elementalstrat.com. Somebody stole Elementor Strategies and I can't get it from them. So elementalstrat.com. From there, you can fill out the contact form. You can learn more about what's on the website. You can email me, Kendall P, Kendall first name, first initial, Kendall P at elementalstrat.com. Email me. And however, any of those ways that you want to get to me, you're perfectly welcome to. If you just want to read the book and understand those 7 elements, it is in a book called The Essential Elements, and it's available on anywhere, Barnes & Noble or Amazon. You can buy it. Or if you want to reach out to me, I can send you an electronic copy that you don't have to pay for, or is cheaper at least. So any of those ways, just what I would encourage you to do is just look around and regardless of whether it's me or somebody else, start to look for a system that you can put in place, because a system is better than a random idea.
Thank you so much. I will really tell you and be very upfront that personally I've learned a lot from you. I know every day I learn from other guests that comes, but sometimes there are some guests that give some kind of value that personally I would tell you I wasn't expecting, So if you have to put it in like a way, in the
one that was going to be boring.
Not really boring. That's why I said if we have to put it in a way whereby you say you measure it, they say you overperform. Definitely, I expect all the guests to perform to a certain level, but sometimes you see some overperformance, So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying this especially because there are things that you hear, it's like you know them already, but it's not for you because the purpose of bringing the guest is not for me. It's for the people that are listening to learn 1 or 2 things. And sometimes it may be some of the things that I've come across, but sometimes there's a way, you put your story that you're like, oh, I didn't even think about this story in this way. Or you look at it and you see opportunities that you never think of in it, so that's some of the things that I do see that, regularly too, but it's sometimes, mind blowing. And for me, it gives me that joy that, the guests are actually bringing value that will actually change people's life. I mean, imagine somebody who never knew that, some of this framework. I mean, I spoke to a lady yesterday too. She was talking about 3 framework, that she uses. And I was telling her that you need to blow your trumpet more because what you're actually offering, a lot of people need it, but they don't even know it exists.
Yeah.
So you need to do more so that people could benefit from it. Same thing, to you, because if you say you have 0, people coming back to say this did not work, I mean, it means virtually every business could adopt this and they will do better. But again, maybe you are only still talking to 1% or even more, maybe less than 1% of businesses around the world today. So that's what I'm saying, that you see opportunities, in the value. But thank you so much. Any last word from you?
No, I appreciate the time, and I appreciate just allowing me to chat about it. And, my goal is just to help. So by all means, if you or any of the listeners to the podcast want help, that's what I'm here for. So don't be bashful. And I appreciate you setting this up, Emmanuel.
Thank you so much for coming through and sharing your story, your journey, your framework, your methodology, your strategy. We really do appreciate it. And we wish you all the best in the future, and stay connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You didn't quit your day job to become a full-time admin assistant. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you didn't start your business to spend 60 hours a week on paperwork, chasing leads, and managing endless admin tasks. You started it to build something meaningful and serve your clients. But right now, you're trapped in the day-to-day grind instead of growing your business. What if I told you our clients are reclaiming 15, 20 hours per week, increasing their revenue by 30 to 50% within 6, 12 months, and finally getting their lives back? We don't just automate random tasks. We build custom AI systems that eliminate the bottlenecks choking your growth, from leads generation to lead, nurturing and management to project management to client follow-ups. Stop paying for an expensive, frustrating manual system. It's time to upgrade to strategic automation. Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free business transformation strategy call today. Discover exactly how much time and money you're losing to manual processes and how to get both back. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Intelligence Forge, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode packed with game-changing insights. Your future automated business is waiting.